Awesome.
Hey everybody, my name is Aaron Shea. Welcome to Habitat Now as we're visiting Weston Lambert and learning a little bit about his life, career, and work. We've been new to Weston's career, though he's been working with glass and stone and other mediums for an extremely long time, and we're honored to have him here at this Habitat Now. We'll be featuring his work in the upcoming Glass Coast weekend, which you're invited to. It's going to be Valentine's Day weekend in February 12th through the 15th down in Sarasota. Weston will be there. You should be there. So I'm looking forward to seeing you then. So Weston, thank you today for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here to chat about the work. And yeah, come to Sarasota. We'll be there.
It'll be great. Yeah. So I have about 9 questions. We'll see how many we get to. Just a little bit about to let our audience learn more a bit about you. You're new to us. We've sold some of your work in the past. We actually just sold a piece today, which is exciting news. I told Weston before we jumped on. So that's great news, right? So let's kick into the first question, Weston. Let's see. So your work explores the slow violence in geological processes. Can you share how that concept first entered your creative vocabulary and how you translate such vast natural timelines into something human and tactical?
The first class that I took in college was geology. It was just one of the like fill it credit kind of classes. And it was, I don't know, pure bliss for me. I enjoyed the thought of like engaging in materials that you could see and touch that were really had gone through what we can like as close as we can understand eternity. They've already gone through that process. So you can hold in your hands like millennia, which I
Mhm.
think is so hard and truly so intangible. Our minds can't really grapple with that. So that was like I think the beginning of the fascination with this geology or with this like touching sort of eternity, something beyond our short lifetime. I think I've always kind of had that fascination. I mean, I won't get too deep into it, but I grew up Mormon. I'm no longer, but there's this like there's this fascination with eternity, right? With most religions. And as I went away from that, I still kind of held that fascination with eternity and sort of trying to understand it. So this is sort of me grappling with my place, I think, ultimately, in the long scope of things.
Mhm.
So that's like the really early on stuff. I mean, I think that every kid goes to the beach and picks up a rock and takes it home. Like I just get to do that all day, basically. I just do the extreme pumped up version where I go to fairs and pick up rocks. But I think it helps me understand my place in the world. And we're going to touch on all this stuff, so I don't want to lay it all out in the
Mhm.
beginning. But I think combining it with glass, which is the man-made, the human-made component, sort of helps me collaborate and interact with that material in a way that I try and not compete with nature because you can't. Nature always wins, right?
Mhm.
So it's my opportunity to sort of complement or play with and interact and really physically figure out my place with the material.
That sounds amazing, man. The idea of the time and the space we can't grasp as human beings. And this material itself that you take and put in with your ink your own takes it to a whole new level. And I think it's exciting and it really turns people's heads when they see it at the show because it's unlike anything else we've ever shown. And the potential is pretty incredible. So, next question. You often talk about the dualities such as transparency and fragility and strength. How do you find balance between those forces in both your materials and your creative mindset?
Oh, I have to say I think like this I have another fascination, which is that balance between the sort of destructive forces and generative forces. Like you think of a Fabergé egg, they can
Mhm.
work hundreds of hours on this delicate thing, and in a second,
It's
it's
gone.
gone, right?
Mhm.
And so I've always been sort of entranced by that seeming imbalance. And so what I do in my work is I take these components that seemingly are the opposite, right? Like stone is eternal, stone is durable. You define things by saying, oh, that's hard as a rock, right?
Yeah, right.
And glass is, oh, it's fragile as glass. What I do is I put them through the same sort of rigor, and I cut them the same, I grind them the same. And what's interesting is they have the same base components. Like silica is a very prevalent element in the earth, right? And glass a lot, it's mostly made of silica. So I think they are the same sort of core components that are expressed very differently. And I love that that sort of opposite, but from the same
Mhm.
place. And obviously, there's this notion of the fragility, right? Of durability. And I am also intrigued by the thought that you can make one fragile and one durable. Glass can be laminated and become ballistic, right? It can be tempered and become extremely durable. So I like that sort of unexpected characteristics of those materials.
That's a great answer, man. I appreciate that. So, your sculpture combines glass and stone in ways that feel both ancient and futuristic. How do you approach marrying these two materials technically and emotionally?
The technical stuff is always pretty easy.
Mhm.
It's training. I've taken a lot of classes over the last 25 years to cast glass. I'm still learning about it. I swear, every day I got an email from Bullseye. I was troubleshooting something, and I was like, "Oh wow, I didn't know that. I should have known that." But there is no should have. Like you're just constantly learning, right? So
Right.
from the technical, it's balancing constantly new elements and testing. And then I use like the best materials that I possibly can and best practices. So treating the material as well as I can. I mean, in some ways, also like as hard as I can to put it through the test to see if it's going to make it. So that's a really important aspect. This notion of the futuristic and sort of archaic. I've talked about this before, but there's this notion of the uncanny valley. If we did you know about that?
What is it? Uncanny what?
The uncanny valley. So like
No.
when you see a robot and it's kind of doing this weird movement, you're like, it looks like a human, it kind of moves, but it's a little unsettling how close it is, but not quite right, right? It,
Mhm.
it sort of sets off these triggers. That's the uncanny valley. And I want my work to not be so much unsettling, but at least sort of make you interrogate what this relationship is of this thing to the surrounding world. It feels like it's one seamless whole. And then at the same time, like if you look really closely, you're able to see that they are two very different components. So I really like people to sort of interrogate the natural world and the human world.
Yeah, there are a few artists that we represent that deal in the familiarity of an object to bring comfort to what you're approaching. But then when you come in to see it, you realize it's something completely different. And it's definitely an interesting artistic approach, especially for those kind of foreign to art, because they walk up to see something, okay, this is cool. I've seen rocks before, but it's not a rock. Or I've seen humans before, but it's not a human. And that is kind of a fun approach because it's already releasing the guard a touch before before the confusion sets in. But it's great.
And
I think to
I think
enjoy
it's
it.
important to be approachable, like I don't need people to have an art education to
Right.
appreciate the work. What I do like is to, like I said, cultivate that sort of curious viewer. And so when people look at the work and they say it's a rock, it tells me more about their ability to look at something closely.
Yeah.
Um, and I find that it's I don't know, it helps me have conversations because it's such a universal material. Like there's an instant sort of touchstone for all of us to talk about these other issues that are much more, I would say, important in many ways. The we touched on the duality aspect. I mean, these I see in some ways very much as sort of vessels that have traveled through time,
Mhm.
and a lot of the extraneous portions have been kind of worn away and taken off. And that's why I like to polish the surfaces because I really see them as proxies for what we go through and they're sort of in one phase, right? Like they've been combined with nature and a human-made, man-made element, and now they're this sort of streamlined thing. But like as time passes, the hard edges get rounded, and that's like perspectives. It's the way we travel through this world. So they're really identify them kind of as like biographical sort of expressions too.
Yeah, I can see that. And there's artists that have dabbled in the style of archaic kind of glass passing through time. The one, the Czech artist Jan Exner, who has retired now, has these beautiful works of glass that have appeared to have been pulled out of an old castle because the surfaces are all treated with chemicals to make them acid etched or disappear, lose the shine and luster. And they have that feeling like, oh, this is a mystery of some kind of past treasure. And then your work incorporates, not beyond that, mixing with the natural mediums and the natural elements of the earth that also have that same appeal. So it's interesting to see how different artists approach the same thing. For you, your expertise is a little bit of both. You have a little bit, you have glass and you have, stone and earth and other materials, and you're able to combine them. And obviously a master degree in lamination. So the idea is to put these things together to create new objects from a past history, which is exciting.
And that I don't know if you found this in your research, but that's what I started doing was classical figurative Italian marble sculpting, like just
Yeah.
figures and like hammer and chisel. So my first familiarity was with stone, and just got into glass like total accident. So
And what was that story? How did you discover glass?
I went to the University of Hawaii and I was going to do sculpture out there, and there were classes I couldn't get into, so I filled with a glass class because I just love doing kind of survey stuff. I enjoy taking on new stuff that I don't really understand. And then we had a flood. I think it was the second semester, and it completely wiped out the studio. We had like water and mud up to the sill of the furnace. So we had to do a glass, like a cold working class. So I had to, of course, combine my stone working and glass. So I just started like throwing them together and seeing how they came out. In fact, I still have like my first piece here with me. So it was a flood basically that made me start this.
Not a great story. You're pushed by nature to work with nature. That's pretty awesome, man. Okay. So let's see. You said the kiln stimulates geological time. Can you walk us through your process in the studio and explain how heat, pressure, and polishing became your tools of accelerated evolution?
I Along the lines of the things that we can't quite comprehend in geological time and just universal time, you think about like the compression within the earth, and it's this like crushing force that we just can't understand the magnitude of, right?
Mhm.
But it's a place where like rock becomes liquid, and I don't know if it's Egyptian, but it's Yedin Nuvir is like the this phrase that means like stone that flows, which is the definition of glass. Basically, that was the word for glass. But it at depth inside the earth, the stone is liquid and turning and like being crunched and twisted. And I kind of like to think of my little mini version of that in my kiln. I'm taking these disparate sort of colors and putting them in a kiln in the crucible and pouring them into a mold. So the piece that you have behind you, the more elaborate pieces, I'll start with a stone, and decide which side I want to work with, take a mold of it, and then create a positive form that will then become the glass. I then cast the glass to match the stone, and then laminate them and carve and polish the whole thing. But it's all sort of like in reference to that original geological process in my own little, minute way compared to the geology within the earth.
That's great, man. Yeah, you can kind of tell like people want to walk up and touch your pieces because the two foreign objects put together is something you don't see every day. And when you walk up and you actually feel the fact that you have cold work the outside of both of them to match, makes them feel like they are one object, which is the whole point of of the work and making something completely new. So it's exciting to see. And people are afraid to touch stuff in our gallery, which is good, especially if you don't know what you're doing. But if you know what you're doing and you're a friend of the family or the Habitat family, we say, please go ahead and now buy it. Good job, it's yours. So that's part of the
Right.
club. So
Right. I was thinking about this yesterday in the studio. People come through and I'm like, if you feel bold enough to touch it, and you're able to buy it, then go for it.
right, exactly. That's the
And
deal.
truly, like when I first started doing this work, one of my frustrations was that you can't touch work. And you can't go to a museum and touch sculpture. Obviously, there's great reason for that. It protects it for other people to be able to see it. But as a person who like exists in this world and I identify with things so much in a tangible, way, like I
Mhm.
have to touch and see. When I go to the store and I buy clothes, I touch the clothes first. I'm not really as concerned. Well, it's mixed, but I'm so tactile. And so when I first started doing these, the whole idea was that they're tangible, they're touchable, they're tactile objects that you can kind of relate to and understand physically. So I feel the same way. Like people come in and I'm like, be gentle, but like you can feel it, I mean, they say like, oh, did you put glass on the outside of the stone? And of course, like it's just that it polishes really nicely because it's got the similar like attributes.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. And we'll do our best to keep people's hands off your work in our gallery, I promise. Okay. Glass and stone each carry a symbolic weight. When you begin new work, do you start with concept, the material, or the feeling you want to capture? I know you just mentioned the stone itself, you take a casting from, but where do you start?
It really depends. There are pieces that I start with an idea or a place, and I think we'll touch on this a little bit. But there are places that I've lived that really influence the work that comes out of the studio, and then sometimes it's just like a particular rock speaks to me. So for this series, a lot of it is really intuitive, responding to the material and sort of engaging with it. Um, so it can really depend. The stuff that I make that I don't show that often has more figurative and sort of architectural elements in it in the castings,
Mhm.
and that is more dependent on original concept that I sketch out and then I start working with. I don't know if you've seen the sort of buildings coming off of the stones at all.
Not yet, no.
Okay, they're pretty like I keep them pretty well tucked. They're just sort of things that I experiment with. But those a lot of them come from this like surrealistic fantasy sort of dream realm.
Mhm.
So those come much more from concept to start. These I would say are a lot more intuitively based. And what's interesting to me is like for this series, I'm very comfortable with these being an intuitive exploration. But as like my practice carries on, I look at artists like Ai Weiwei and Ronnie Horn who use glass not because they're enthralled with the material. They have a concept and then they go, what works best for this? Is it wood? Is it resin? Is it glass? And the material that suits the concept the best, that's what they choose to use. So I feel like that's the direction that I am always kind of leaning or always thinking about like why are we using glass? It's such a
Mhm.
sexy, amazing material. Just like you watch people work with it hot and I mean cold. People say they want to come to the studio and watch me grind for a while. It's like the most boring process,
Right.
but it's also like hyper meditative. So
Yeah, it takes a lot to do the cold working thing. People say it is the least fun part of glass, but I think it's the part that pays off the most. But you have to have a certain mentality and patience by far. I think it's the Puta for hours about it, and he is a master cold worker, but he has the patience for it, which is exciting. Um,
I find it's actually like a in some ways it's a psychological anchor. It's very much a soothing thing to a point, and
mm,
like given there aren't too many frustrations, but it's really meditative to me, usually.
usually, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see. You've lived and worked across the U.S. and Hawaii, Orleans, and Tacoma. How have your environments shaped your sense of place and the permanence of your art?
I would say they sort of they provide a background for contrast that help you sort of I mean you're wherever you go you're inevitably going to be changed passively by the culture and like you think of places like New Orleans and Hawaii they're really distinctive and the cultures are really distinctive. There's no way that you can be there and not be changed by them. So I really treasure those things, and I think they come out in the work. But they also sort of confirm, I think, parts about you that like kind of have always been there and will always be there that will likely never change. So I don't know. In New Orleans, I would long for the crisp, sort of cold, damp, cloudy Pacific
Mm.
Northwest. I know that sounds insane to most people, but it like the cloud cover I see is like a warm hug, and the heat of New Orleans is like I find it a little bit oppressive sometimes. So it really just it kind of does both things. It I fold in new elements from the place, and then I also um, am certainly like confirming things. Sorry, do you hear that loud noise?
Not at all.
Oh, perfect. Great.
Perfect.
It sort of confirms parts about me that will always be there, like my draw to the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, that's great, man. You have that kind of world experience. Keep things alive. And sorry you have to live in places that are hot. It happens. Um,
I honestly sometimes I think I because it's like I do the same thing to the work. I like putting it through the ringer to make sure it can survive. And there's like
mhm.
this durability test where I'm like, oh, let me go to India in August. That's a horrible idea. And that's like, I always seem to do that. And I feel like I don't know, and I enjoy the challenge and pushing the limits. So And what's crazy too is that like the travel always kind of makes you long for being home and stable. And then when you're home and stable, like it sort of necessitates a change of environments, right?
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's see. Next question is your work spans from small scale pieces to important public installations. How does your creative approach change with scale, and what challenges or freedoms comes with each?
Ooh, that's such a heavy, heavy subject because technically, I'm sure people are probably familiar, or at least can imagine that there's a lot of bureaucratic sort of things that happen with public art and
Mhm.
even large scale commissions. There's just like the physics of things change. So you have to think in a different sort of, with a different part of your brain that's much more structural and sort of uh, durability and if it's going to be outside and all that stuff.
Mhm.
That all changes and it pushes you in a way that I think is really good and healthy. And then I think with the small works or stuff that I would consider works for the studio or galleries, there's certainly much more freedom to do sketching and to play and to experiment with new concepts and new aesthetics that you don't get. And like when you're in the public world, you design something, you execute it, and you deliver it. In the art world, you certainly have more freedom in the early phases and less commitment, I think, to that duration of a project that is required for public work. You have the freedom to play with more concepts. So they both kind of have their strong suits. Like if I were just in the studio all day, I think that your mind can be sort of like cloistered. There are parts of your mind that don't get exercised. So I really like having that spectrum of different things. And like working with clients, it forces me to do things in a way that I wouldn't have done, and I find that to be very productive. So good and bad for each, honestly.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean,
So let's
in some
jump.
ways, I love and hate both of them.
Right.
The studio is like so beautiful that you have this eternal freedom to just do whatever you want. And sometimes it's daunting, Usually it's not. It's like I feel lucky to be able to do that. Um, and then the vice versa with public art, it's if you're like hemmed in and you can't change your ideas, it gets a little rigid. So
Yeah, that's why contracts are very, very useful to
they
make sure
are.
you have as much information as possible and then opportunity for change based on some kind of change in the contract. So it's all in the
Yeah.
details. Devil's in the details.
Communication is so
Yeah.
huge in those. Yeah.
So let's jump into the big social media question because you have a large presence on social media. You've built a strong following on social media, which is rare for an artist working with such physically demanding mediums. How has that platform changed your relationship with the audience or with your collectors?
What I keep thinking about is that every time I answer these questions, like there's this duality piece. There's the good and the bad for each.
Mm,
I know social media with artists is a very difficult thing, but I think it can be so liberating in so many ways too, as long as you kind of keep it within bounds.
mm,
What's really great is you've been to a million gallery shows and people are like, oh, that's nice, oh, that's lovely. And if they don't say something negative, they say it behind your back or to somebody else, and they won't say, oh, I don't really like how this happened, which I kind of would welcome.
mm,
But people online, the benefit is like they don't give a crap. They'll say
right.
whatever they want. And obviously, you take advice from people who you respect and trust and
Right.
admire. Those are the things that you take in the most deeply into heart. So you don't listen to what everybody says, and some people just go off. But when you hear the same things over and over and over again, if nothing else, because our job is partially to communicate with people, like if you're not communicating something and people want to know more, then they'll tell you, or if they think something doesn't work, they'll just say it. And
Mm,
so you can get sort of if you can develop enough skin to not let it destroy the parts of you that are like precious and that you need to protect to really stay inspired and stay creative and like uh, keep your antenna very finely tuned and delicate.
yeah.
If you can protect all those things and listen to some of the things, I think that you can find a balance between what people say um, and what you can like apply to the work. Because ultimately, like you're on there and this is a storytelling venue, right? And
Mhm.
people want to hear the story. They want to know about the work and about you and how you approach the work. And so that it just becomes very clear if you're communicating or not. So there's also like the financial element, like there's a lot more people seeing the work. You're exposed to a lot more people. That's a huge benefit. Obviously, it comes with downsides too. So it's a complicated relationship. And I think if you can control it internally and you know when to like shut it off, take a break and not look at your phone or feel boosted by likes or things like that, then you can actually do really well with it. I tend to think of it as a device that can teach me. And so I have a feeling about a piece that like it needs to be improved in a specific element or a specific way. And when people confirm that for me, I am like bolstered, you
Mhm.
know. I kind of use it as my as a tool.
A little bit of therapy there. I getcha. My
Kind
favorite,
of,
my
yeah, yeah.
favorite bit was Jimmy Fallon taking movie stars and making them read hateful tweets live
Yeah.
on TV, getting the feedback from people who don't like them.
Those are great. Those
It
are
was
great.
great. But you're
And
right.
sometimes it's just so funny. Like it's hard to take offense at some people's comments, like it's yeah.
It's how it is. But it's good you have that kind of feedback when you need it for purposes that exist. And then exposure to the work. I know you do sales on social media as well, which also adds to the income of your studio, which is very important. So having that ability to reach out to people. What I'm afraid of is what's next. Like what after social media comes and goes, what's the next thing we have to do? We're gonna have to advertising in children's brains. I don't know, but it's gonna be something crazy. And
Seriously,
then we
it's
have
a
this.
little worrisome. Yeah. And
So
and I will say like there have been so many benefits to social media. I mean, it's the reason I get to be in the studio all day, every day.
mhm.
And but there's obviously really dangerous parts about it too, and it's very easy to think that you're balanced in your approach and to not be. So it's like, they know what they're doing. They know how to manipulate us to want more of it. So like, yeah, it's been amazing, but you certainly have to be extremely cautious with it.
Right. I'll tell you a story after the Zoom about something that's interesting I think you'll get a kick out of. But I do find the fact that social media does have an aspect to all of the artists for getting out there in some shape or form and doing some of the work for the galleries as well. Because the old the old technology I was raised with, which isn't so much valid anymore, is like the old seven touches of a sale. And the social media is another touch that people can get involved in and get touched over and over again, pending they like what they see. The old
Yeah.
days when you had a gallery show and you'd open the doors, people would walk in, like you'd say, people like what they like, they kept their mouth shut, they disappear if they didn't like it. But now with social media out there, you're going to get every opinion all the time, every day, and it could be intense.
I'm sort of hopeful that in the near future, and I feel like this is happening with the next generation, that there is a sort of a return to the tangible, the in-person,
Mhm.
the offline stuff, like you actually go in and see people and talk face to face, like there's so much more weight to that we feel. And I do feel like we're going toward that. I
Yeah, I
I,
agree.
I
I
hope.
agree. I agree because the way that the internet's being manipulated by those in charge is making people unhappy. And I mean, reading a video today about Windows and how it records everything you do. And I just want to use the dang thing. I don't need it to know my favorite food and what I like to watch on TV. And
Seriously.
it's a little burdensome, and there's ways around it, but you have to be in the know. And I think you're right. People will start getting angry once again and getting off this stuff, or using services that they do approve of that don't, do this kind of terrible thing to us all.
You
But
know,
I digress. Back to number nine. We have
Well,
a
can I add one more thing there?
sure, yeah.
One of the other things that like I value in the process in the studio is the idea that each one of the pieces is one off, it's unique.
Mhm.
And in a way, it's like me like reaching out to somebody, like there's a direct contact that this isn't mass produced. This is like I made this thing and there's nothing else like it in the world. And this thing now is yours,
Yours, right?
And it's one of the reasons I like to like write notes to clients and to send postcards because like when's the last time you got a letter from somebody? Like
Mhm.
that is
Ancient
uh
technology.
ancient
Right.
technology, but it's also so beautiful
Personal. Right.
to be in touch that way. So
Yep.
anyway, I digress now.
I agree. We need more of that. Okay. Number nine, we had great success placing your work with collectors through the gallery. When someone lives with one of your sculptures, what do you hope they feel over time?
I mean, it's one of the priorities for me is not so much that people are stopped or interrupted in their day, but that they may like see the work and feel just a moment of repose, like a moment of breathing in like this crazy fast-paced world, right? Like everything has to be go, 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 go. I'm kind of hopeful that like one, I make them really look and think about the work, and that they, as they view it, they see it through a new lens every time because it changes with different light and with different perspectives. But they're given sort of a moment to kind of relax that it's adding something beneficial to their world, or with the smaller pieces that they're able to actually carry them around. I know it's a little daunting because they're not cheap, but also, like we are we're not getting out of this alive, like things break, things happen. So I really want people to kind of engage with the work. And I also think I I want them to have a sense that there's some unknown and there's some magic left, as we sort of depart from a basis in science, which is not cool. We get away from the fact that like we don't know like what's in the bottom of the ocean, what's out in the stars. There's just so many phenomena that we don't really understand or haven't been curious enough to explore, that I want people to see the work and look at it and think, how is this done? Like, what is this? Where does it belong? And I want them to approach that the rest of the world with that same type of curiosity and sort of enthusiasm for experiencing the world. I know that's kind of lofty, but I really do hope people come away feeling like somewhat rejuvenated and like curious and excited about the world, because there's so much like beauty and magic out there. And I know all the stuff that's happening in the world, there's so much terror and awful things. But I think there's so much that like is that we can connect to and connect with other people through. um, I'm getting off track, but I feel hopeful and optimistic, and I want people to feel the same.
That's great, man. You're right. The magic of artwork can uplift everybody and at least give them a moment of freedom and clarity from their lives and problems. So with your work, people can do that and they can really enjoy it and experience it live and in person, which is what we really want them to do. So everybody out there, take your time, go to your local gallery, come visit us at Habitat, and make sure you have a chance to visit Weston's work with us in Sarasota or here in Royal Oak, Michigan. So with that, Weston, I want to thank you for joining me today. It was an honor to get to know you, meet you for the first time face to face, and talk about your life, career, and work. I look forward to seeing you down in Sarasota. Looking forward to seeing the new masterpieces we'll have down there and continue our relationship, man. Well, thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right, everybody. We'll see you guys very soon at West Coast Weekend. Bye bye.